work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Career Exploration Saturday. I'm your host, Ebony Tyler. I have real conversations with real people about real jobs. So this week, my guest is Stewart Irby. Stewart is the owner of Power Generation and Distribution Services, an electrical engineering consultant firm. Stewart's company has a direct effect on our community. I was so inspired by his work. Let's jump right into our conversation. So good afternoon. Welcome, Stewart. Welcome to Career Exploration Saturday. I am so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
So, folks, Stewart is a direct referral from my father. So shout out to Daddy.
No doubt. Brother Lee.
So, Stewart, tell us about your 16-year-old self. That's where we like to start all the conversations. Did you know what you wanted to be? Did you have it all figured out?
Did I have it all figured out? You know, at 16, yeah, you always think you have it figured out. At 16, I was working for Social Security Administration off of Jamaica Avenue. Yeah. I was working for Social Security as a payroll liaison, no doubt. Processing direct deposits and setting up bank accounts for the organization. I started with a summer job, and my aunt, she introduced me to somebody in personnel, and I interviewed, and they liked me, and they kept me, and so I did that while, part-time while I was in school. Mm-hmm. I was going to Thomas Edison High School at the time, technical vocational off of Jamaica Avenue, and the program that I was under was electrical installation. I always knew I wanted to be an engineer or in the electrical industry. I just didn't know the work that was required to do it. And honestly, at 16 years old, I didn't have the focus to really stick with the program for engineering. I had to go the long way. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Thomas Edison, that's one of those CTE schools that provide students with lots of vocational training. Yeah. So you knowing that that's what you were interested in, or that's your passion or your interest, and then you're actually working in that field now is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, I'll go a little further beyond when I was 16. My grandfather, God rest his soul, Stewart Irby, he was one of the first African-American merchant Marines. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I don't know, 7, 8 years old, like he had this office, and in his office he had, just all types of doodads and knickknacks from all over the world. And he had this map in front of his desk, and it had these red pins in it. There was a map of the world, and these red pins of all of the different places that he had been to. And I would stare at this map, and I would count the different locations and say, man, oh my goodness, I want to do that. I remember locking that into my mind that I'm going to travel the world. Now, I didn't become a merchant Marine, but as fate would have it, I work on the Marine vessels, and I've traveled the world. And since then, in my office, right in front of my desk, I have this map of the world with all of these different red points, that I had been to. And, the same thing with my kids. They sit there and, you've been there? Oh yeah, that's where I'm going next, and so I hope it works for them too.
That's really cool. So you were in the military. Did you go to the military out of high school?
Yes, I did. My grandfather, merchant Marine. My father, he was in the United States Army as well. And, financially, we weren't really afforded the opportunity to, have a full ride paid for, and I didn't receive any scholarships at the time, even though I was accepted to one of the SUNY schools for engineering. So the military was brought as an option, and I decided to take it for power generation, which was it was a great fit. Again, chasing after the experience and the idea of becoming an engineer right? This was an avenue for me to do so, travel the world at the same time. I was definitely afraid of that. You know, my father had to kind of push me out the door a little bit there to, you know, let me know I could do it. And, you know, for a while, I kind of resented the idea that I had to go into the military. My sister and my younger brother, they both went into college. And it was probably one of the most beneficial things that I could have ever done, because it gave me a foundation, one, in the industry, two, with experience. It did give me financial support for college. I did travel the world. You know, I learned a lot of core values that make me who I am today. You know, esprit de corps, right? Which essentially means that, you know, the values that we have for our fellow man. And yeah, it was a great experience. It really was.
So when you left the military, you started working for private companies, or did you immediately open up your own business? Because folks,
Right.
Stewart owns his own electrical company, which we want to hear all about. But what was your pivot, your segue out of the military into your career, or to further your career?
Right. So, you know, military experience is a great highlight on your resume. One thing I can honestly say is I've never had an issue finding work. One, having a technical background, and then two, being honorably discharged from the military. The very first job I jumped into, the first 3 or 4 jobs, well, no, the first job was a service technician for a Cintas, that's what it is, the uniform company. And I think I was making $10 an hour. You know, this is military experience, and I knew it was just kind of like my transitional job. And you know, I all throughout my career, I came across somebody who told me I couldn't do it. And I think the first person that told me that I couldn't do it and that this was the best I was going to get was coming from a place of prejudice and a place of hate. And, you know, I knew my worth at the time. I knew that there was something more out there for me. And I was, you know, I was a go-getter, so I was hungry. So I stayed there for maybe 6 months, and I gave my resignation to move on. And I took on a managerial job, but this was with a concrete company. And that really wasn't a fit for me. I did that for about a year. And then I got my first break with a company called TAW as an electrical services technician. And from this point on, I was able to collect, you know, some really good experiences and network, right? Because it is all about networking. You know, we can't do this thing alone.
Right.
And I came across a gentleman by the name of Mark Reed. Mark Reed, to this day, I give him a lot of credit for teaching me how to run my own business. Because Mark shared with me, I think he might have been my age now when me and him first met over 20 years ago. And he taught me as a young man, right? And Mark is white. He taught me as a young man how to conduct myself when it comes to business, and how to conduct myself as a technician, and basically how to be a business owner, how to project manage, how to, you know, sales, deal with the customer, and how to be resourceful. Because sometimes you don't know the answer to a question, but to be resourceful enough to either pick up the phone and call somebody who does, or find the information that you're looking for, whether it's, you know, through documentation, research, or the internet, is a very valuable skill to have. And from that opportunity, from that experience, I was able to get hired on with some of the other bigger companies, because TAW was a very small outfit. But the experience, the knowledge that I had gained from working, you know, just in that short period of time, from the military to TAW, because, you know, having a mentor, man, I can't say enough about that. You know, to have, my father used to say when I was a kid, you know, you can't see your ears, I can. Right. And basically saying that, you know, you need somebody to tell you what you look like doing some of the things that you're doing, to give you, you know, either constructive criticism, or, you know, tell you you're heading in the wrong direction. or that you just have some mustard on your lip, And so Mark did that for me, and I think I still to this day I thank him. But from then on, I went to Caterpillar, where I worked as a product support engineer or project engineer, where I would go out to the different facilities and I would commission standby systems or paralleling systems that would actually parallel to the grid. And the jobs became a lot more involved and technical. And every challenge that I was faced with, it gave me an opportunity to grow. And sometimes we don't see that, right? Like we don't see the struggle that we have at the time that we're having it as being a necessary tool to prepare you for the next job or the next task at hand. And I just remember going through that job and feeling like I just didn't belong in the room, right? Because I was maybe the least experienced. But, what that pressure did for me, it's a part of the foundation that I'm standing on today as well. So I went from Caterpillar to Siemens, which was my last company that I worked for 7 years. And while with Siemens, I was still doing automation controls, power systems, and I had adopted another skill, excuse me. And that skill was for remote racking. So remote racking systems are these robots that actually rack in and rack out industrial breakers on live systems, live networks. And so the thing about that is a safety device. And so like as an operator or an electrician, as we was talking about earlier, if he's racking this breaker in physically himself and that breaker fails, it can explode. Mm. And there have been countless casualties based on, this one phenomenon that occurs. And so several companies have designed and developed these robots to do that. So I took over this portion of the business for Siemens, which at the time I think they were doing maybe $150,000 worth of sales, and I grew it. I grew it to $20 million in 1 year of business, and this is with them giving me the authority to hire my own helpers or assistants. And so what I did with that is, again, I went to my community and I reached out and I pulled in some young men who were interested in learning this skill. And, there's this saying, and I heard this the other day by a speaker, and you just, we all hear it, right? You reap what you sow. And it's not just a bad thing that we're talking about, right? Like if you do good things will come to you, right? If you plant something, water it, then it will produce fruit. Well, I invested a lot of my personal time in teaching these guys the business, right? I wanted them to get their foot in the door with Siemens anyway, because they started off as contractors. So while we were successful with the business, we grew the business. I was able to get them hired on permanently. Siemens decided that, hey, anybody can do that job, what Stewart's doing. We can save money, close up his shop, move it up to Chicago and let somebody else do it. So I ended up being relocated. All of the guys got relocated. And at some point, me and Siemens didn't see eye to eye. And so I resigned from Siemens. And in that time, sometimes circumstance is the thing that's the catapult or the catalyst to pushing us to the next level. Being married with 6 kids, 5 girls and a boy and a grandbaby now. It wasn't that long ago. Like.
6 kids, Stewart, woo!
I know, but listen, I'm finally done. That's it. I think I know where babies come from at this point. So I resigned and word got out, right? I had developed enough relationships with my customers and, I didn't burn any bridges. Word got out, hey, Stewart's, working on his own. Hey, we've got this project that we can use you on that Siemens is doing that you can be our inside source, right? Our consultant, so to speak. And so, it started with that one job, and from there it continued to grow. Business grew, and I was traveling all over the world, and just as I was doing with Siemens, except for cutting the middleman out, and now I get to charge 4 times what I was making while working for Siemens, and then they had a layoff, and they laid off the guys that I had got hired on with the company. Well, I had been doing business at that point for so long that I had developed a demand for more people who were skilled to do the work that we were doing. So I hired them all on and sent them right back out to work. And from that moment, I was able to grow my business just off of that. And so I mentioned about you reap what you sow, because we sometimes think that we have to do something to get something. And I believe that one of the greatest part, or the greatest success to my business, has been that I've been willing to give of myself, right? And do so in a manner that helps people out far beyond what it will for myself. And then that, reciprocates itself. And so, all of those guys still work with me to this day. And life does come full circle, because Siemens, they came back to me last year and they said, listen, this racks business is not doing well, and so we want to sell it to you.
Oh.
And so I bought the patent for the remote racking unit. And the one thing that they didn't know at the time, right, when I was in charge of it while I was working for Siemens, is that I had come up with the design for the 2.0. And when they took the business from me, I kind of put it in a drawer, right, and forgot about it. And so now that I own the patent for it, and I have rights over it, I went ahead and designed the prototype for the 2.0, right? And one is like the suitcase version of the other. So it's a lot, the original Cerax, the legacy version, is 280 pounds, about 6 foot tall. And, the Cerax Lite is 3 feet tall, about 80 pounds. And so, we just make it a little more marketable.
So you dropped a lot of technical stuff. So what is electrical, like an electrician versus an electrical engineer, an engineer?
Right.
What is the difference?
Okay, so an electrician he's going to be more of the laborer, in the sense of setting the equipment, pulling the cable between the equipments, terminating. He's going to really take the instructions and direction from the engineer who would have designed the system, whichever system it is that they're installing. And so I'll give kind of like an example. So in the marine world, and I do a lot of construction or startup work for marine vessels, we have what you call OSVs, oil supply vessels. And the oil supply vessels, 300 foot long, right, maybe 100 foot wide. These are huge vessels it's like a little city, right? You have generators, you have switchboards, you have fans, you have motors, you've got pumps, you've got all types of different devices on this vessel. And so an electrical engineer would design the actual electrical layout and would say, okay, we need this size generator, we need this size switchboard, we need this size breakers. And then he would take that paper with the equipment on order, and he would hand it to an electrician and say, okay, here's your equipment coming in. I need you to make all of these terminations or make all of these connections, make sure, we're using the proper size cable, proper size lugs, where the distance is, et cetera, et cetera. So the electrician is more of a laborer.
Got it. Now, it sounds that your business is very lucrative. Absolutely. And that you're able to, hire the people that you want to hire. Mm-hmm. So is it better for a young person to go into engineering, or is it better for them to go and become an electrician? Because I would think that we would need electricians, right? Because somebody's got to fix the light, the switch. There's lots happening in real estate, and that we should be there. And then, so 2 parts to that question, right? Like, which would you recommend for a young person to get their hands into, go big and go engineering, or do electrical first? And then would you suggest vocational trade, on the job training, or college?
Yeah, so I think it starts with the individual, right? you have to know what kind of person you are. Are you a hands-on person? Are you somebody who likes to sit in front of the computer? Are you somebody who likes to, work remotely? Or are you an adventurous, on the job, tool in hand kind of person? And it starts with that question there. And the reason why I say that is when I first started with Thomas Edison, at Thomas Edison for high school, I signed up for the electrical engineering program.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know was the electrical engineering program started out with all math, and I hated math, right? And down the hall, I could hear people laughing and joking, and I hear tools banging, and I walk down there and I see the electrical installation class. They're wiring up doorbells, lights, different, simple circuits, and then working towards complex circuits, but they're doing the physical work, and you can actually see the work that you're doing firsthand. And so I dropped my engineering class so that I could be hands-on with the electrical installation class. And for me at the time, that's where my mind was. That's what my attention would allow. So again, depending on what type of person you are, that's how I would kind of answer that. If you're a hands-on person, then the vocational way is the way you'd want to go. Now, don't get me wrong, you can make a lot of money as an electrician or an electrical technician, right? Because those two run pretty close. You can make well over six figures doing both. I know some electricians that make an upward range of $50, $60 an hour. And then if you really want to get funky with it and do overseas contracting, then you can, make a lot more money as an electrician. And so I don't take anything away from whichever, path a person takes. I don't give less respect to an electrician or more respect to an engineer because of the title. Now, because the flip side of being an electrical engineer, and I've worked with guys who have had their PhD in engineering, and I've taken them out to the field and said, okay, well, this is the transformer, and this is what we're getting ready to do. And they're like, but the transformer doesn't look like that on paper, right? And so, the practicality is what, now gets shifted, right? So, that's what it really depends on. And again, an electrical engineer, you can make just that amount of money and more. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier when we was talking offline, that my father used to say to me, right? What do you rather get paid for, right? What you do or what you know? And as an engineer, you're going to get paid for what you know. Currently, I'm working on getting my electrical engineering degree so that I can get my professional engineering license or certification. And the reason for that is that stamp carries, what's the word that I'm looking for? That stamp carries a lot of weight. To be able to put a design, a professional engineering design on a set of drawings is with minimal work. And so the older I get, the less physical work I want to do.
Right.
That's the direction that I'm taking my business as well.
Wow. So you've traveled all over. You've you're in Louisiana right now. Can you share a little bit about this project that you're about to start? Because it sounds pretty fascinating.
Right, and so this one's going to be a little difficult because, like I said, I got to part ways with my beard. I'm currently in a 5-day quarantine because, as you know, with the pandemic and this vessel that I'm going out to see is just a few hundred miles off of the coast. And so they can ill afford somebody to come on to the vessel and contaminate. So the extra, the course that they're taking as far as 5 days quarantine prior to you going out there, then you get tested. And then when you get on the vessel, you're isolated to the area where you work at and to your quarters for the first 5 days. So the project that we're actually doing, this vessel is going through a 5-year maintenance plan. And so they have electrical protective devices called protective relays that monitor each individual circuit on their vessel. And so these electrical protective relays have electrical functions that need to be verified to make sure that, that the system is going to protect the equipment. And so what I'll do is I'll go out there with a Doble, which is a test set, and I'll connect up to these relays, and I'll test all of the electrical protective functions that were set at one point by a professional engineer who did the coordination studies, and I'll validate that this unit is calibrated and still doing its job.
So has your job changed a little bit since Corona?
Yeah, it really has. We had several projects going on. I had a few guys out at Microsoft. We were commissioning a couple of data centers, which, when the pandemic hit, everybody was kind of apprehensive. But the moment that, you get 1, 2, 3 people sick on the facilities and you see how fast it's spreading, work immediately stopped. One of my big customers, which happens to be Siemens, we provide service support for Siemens. And so by them, and when I say them, by the country slowing down or coming to a halt, it stopped work for everybody. And so even their own internal personnel who were busy at one point or another on different jobs ended up missing out on work as well. So the projects that we were splitting that I was supporting them on, they now have to, keep within in-house. So it slowed the contracts that I had going where I had my guys utilized on. So that forced me to have to kind of go back to the drawing board and look at different areas where we could ramp up to produce work for the service guys. And so one of the things that we've been fortunate to do, as I shared with you about the patent and the remote racking unit, is to put focus on developing and providing maintenance plans for the units that were previously sold while with Siemens and, that we've recently sold ourselves. So, there's so many different facets to the business, not just the service side of it. We also provide infrared scans, thermography, where we'll go out to a customers' facilities with an infrared camera, and we'll scan all of their electrical equipment as a preventative maintenance check to identify any hot spots that might be from loose connections. And, it could potentially save a customer thousands of dollars. So there's so many different facets to what we do and what we offer. We just have to shift gears a little bit. And so we've been doing that.
So now, what is it like being a Black man owning your own electrical company? Because I'm sure that there's not a lot of you. So
right.
What's it like going in these spaces, getting these contracts? Because, I was looking at your website and you have government contracts, you like municipalities. Like what is that like being the a Black man in this work?
Right. I like to say, sometimes there's the times where you don't notice, right? And then other times where it's so prominent and, you are alarmed to the fact that, okay, they recognize I'm a minority. I have to change up how I'm moving. I got to be a little more direct. Personality is not going to be key here. It's going to have to come down to what we know, what we're capable of, and what the price value is. And in some cases, you just know it's going to be a hard no, right? Because that good old boy system is definitely still in play. I mean, we see it a lot. We see it in politics. When people ask me about the diversification as far as the hiring aspect of it, 90% of the guys who work, 95% of the guys that work for me are African American. That's not because that's just what I go after. Again, it's about me reaching out into my community. And, initially I was quite fearful of, what does that look like when I walk onto a job site and when there's 20 white people in a room and now you walk in with 5 or 6 Black guys behind you, right? I didn't think that people would notice something like that, but wow, do they? It's so jarring. I think, people are used to in my industry, and I can only speak for my industry.
Right.
Like, for instance, while we were at this construction site in Chicago, this room where we would meet in the morning to do our morning toolbox talk, 200 people. I was asked to bring in 6 guys to support the project. And I brought in 6 of my guys. And some of the comments that I heard was, wow, you guys walked in and you guys look like a football team or a basketball team. Okay, but the reason why we're here as engineers, as technicians, is for this particular task. And so when we're sitting in that room and, you know, the shift of energy, right, you recognize that. So there, you do have to have thick skin. Like, let's call it what it is. You can't fight the world. And sometimes you can't argue every point. And sometimes you got to let your actions kind of speak for you. You know, what you're doing speak for you. And, you know, all in all, it does feel good. You know, it feels good to be a part of change in a sense, because what I'm also doing, I have no secrets. So I share with all of my guys every single thing it is that I did to get where I'm at. And I show them how to do it so that they can do it for themselves if they so choose to. And, you know, and that's my motto. It's always been my motto.
That is awesome. I really like that. So final question. I mean, how do we support you?
Right.
Are you only in the South? Yeah.
No, not at all. Like, we had a project up in New York for about a year long at water treatment facilities up in the Bronx, actually. So the way that I need support now is I need youth. I need hungry young men and women.
You know what? I was going to ask you, it slipped, because I'm like, you keep saying guys. Is there an opportunity for women, for girls to get into this work?
I am so glad you asked that question. I remember while I was working for Siemens, my manager, me and him was having a conversation, and I asked him, I said, you know, well, why is it that you guys don't have many, you know, women engineers? And he said, Stewart, if you can find them, I'll hire them.
Wow.
We are turning over stones for women engineers who want to do this kind of work. And so forgive me, because you're right, as I was speaking specifically towards guys, and I have all girls, right? Pretty much all girls except for my son. And, you know, I offer this up to them. I implore them to dive into this industry, because the industry does need more women engineers. I was working with one in Portland, Cassie, brilliant young lady, you know, and she's hands-on, and, you know, she's learning generators, she's learning relay testing, she's learning switchgear, you know, she knows PLC, she knows programming, and, you know, and she's 24 years old.
Wow.
Right. And so 5 years from now, she's going to be a monster at this, you know, and every time I see her, I congratulate her, you know, it does my heart good. You know, I'm kind of like this when I see it. Hey, girl power. So I welcome all engineers, any type of hungry young people who want to learn. You know, we've got it. I have a shop in Douglasville, Georgia, where I have several Serax units that, you know, even with my guys, we'll use as tutorials or training, where we'll tear one apart and we'll put it back together again. Because like I shared with them, you know, so many years ago, if you learn this one piece of equipment right here and you master it, when you go out there in the world, you know, you can fit and figure out how each component of this one device fits into everything else that you see in the world.
Wow.
Or the different applications that we see. So to support our organization, that's what I need. I need youth.
Parents, what are we doing? We need to be pushing our kids into electrical work, into engineering.
Absolutely. And again, if it's not engineering, right? If it's not engineering and you are a hands-on person, you know, electrician fits the bill, right? right? There's a lot of great experiences. It's a great career, you know, and we always need it.
Well, you know what? We're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Stewart. This was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Ebony. This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Stewart. Thank you so much for sharing your career journey. So some takeaways for me are: know yourself. Are you a hands-on person or a theory person? This will help you in deciding which entry path will help you get into the electrical industry. There's no right way to get there. All you got to do is get there. There's space for us. There's space for girls. There's lots of space for girls. And there's lots of space for us. And parents, we've got to get our kids into electrical work. Electrical engineers, electricians, we need to be there. Second, you reap what you sow. The things you do today, the relationships you cultivate today will bring you rewards and harvest in the future. And three, this is a recurring theme at Career Exploration Saturday: mentorship. Get you a mentor. All right, so listen, thank you so much, Stewart, and welcome to the Liberated Success community. So folks, if you like this video, show us some love. And by love, I mean a donation. The link is in my bio. Don't forget to register for Shared Talent Family Conference. And don't forget to register for our Civil Service webinar series. These are all happening this month, the month of October. All right? And the links for all of these things are in my bio. All right, folks. You know what we do. You know how we do. We save ourselves. We're not looking for handouts. We take care of ourselves. All right? So what are we going to do? We're going to stay masked up. We'll wash our hands. Continue to physically distance. All Black Lives Matter. And we're going to vote Biden-Harris. Have a great Saturday. See you next week.